The fog rolled thick across Fort Campbell that November morning, the kind that swallowed sound and made the Kentucky ranges feel like the edge of the world. Sarah Beckett walked the firing line with her metal bucket, boots crunching gravel in the pre-dawn silence. Each step sent pain flowering through her right shoulder, a reminder that shrapnel doesn't care about your plans or your pride. She bent to pick up a brass shell casing. The movement made her wince. Afghanistan flashed behind her eyes, the RPG blast tearing through the Humvee door, her spotter's scream cutting short, blood mixing with sand under a sun that didn't care who lived or died. She dropped the casing into the bucket. The metallic clink echoed across the empty range. Her hand was shaking. She made it stop. 6 months since the medical board decided Staff Sergeant Sarah Beckett wasn't fit for active duty anymore. 6 months of watching other soldiers train for missions she'd never run again. 6 months of picking up their brass like she was cleaning up after children. The pain in her shoulder wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. The way sergeants looked past her now. The way her name didn't come up in briefings anymore. The way she'd become invisible. She moved down the line, bucket getting heavier. The morning light was starting to burn through the fog, revealing the targets set at various distances. 500 meters, 800, 1200, standard stuff for infantry qualification. Then she saw it. At the far end of the range, barely visible even to her trained eye, a silhouette target stood against the distant hillside. She squinted through the lifting mist, estimating the distance by the terrain features she'd memorized over months of walking this range. 3,400 meters, maybe more. She'd only heard of shots like that being made in combat, and even then rarely. Her own longest confirmed kill had been 2,847 meters in the mountains of Helmand province. That shot had saved her convoy. That shot had also been the beginning of the end, because 2 minutes later, the RPG found their vehicle and her shoulder stopped being something she could rely on. The memory carried weight. The Taliban commander had been setting up an ambush, directing his fighters into position with hand signals Sarah could see clearly through her scope. If she'd missed, 6 Americans would have driven straight into a kill zone. She hadn't missed. The sound of vehicles approaching pulled her back to the present. A convoy of Humvees rolled up to the range, dust trailing behind them like ghosts. Out stepped a group of officers, American and foreign. Among them was a man who moved like he owned not just the ground he walked on, but the air above it. Major Lucas Kane, British Special Air Service, according to the briefing Sarah had overheard in the mess hall. Here for some kind of international military exchange program. One of the most decorated snipers in the United Kingdom, with confirmed kills across 3 continents and a reputation that preceded him like thunder before lightning. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a kind of tailored uniform that spoke of either vanity or precision, probably both. His eyes were the blue of winter ice, and they swept across the range with the practiced assessment of a man who saw the world in terms of angles and wind speed and kill zones. Colonel Briggs, the range commander, was doing the talking, gesturing to the various firing positions, explaining the setup. Kane listened with the air of someone being told things he already knew, but was too polite to interrupt. Sarah set down her bucket and moved to the next collection of brass casings. Stay invisible. Do the job. Don't think about what you used to be. The demonstration began with basic marksmanship. American soldiers firing at 800 meters. Good groupings. Respectful nods from the foreign observers. Then 1,200 meters, where the difficulty increased, but the results remained solid. Kane stepped up to the firing line. He was handed an M24 sniper rifle, which he examined with the casual familiarity of a craftsman inspecting a tool he'd used 1,000 times. He settled into position behind the weapon with an economy of movement that spoke of muscle memory older than thought. The first shot echoed across the range, center mass on the 1,200-meter target. Without pause, Kane adjusted and engaged the 1,800-meter target. Another perfect hit. He stood up, handed the rifle back to the range officer, and looked out toward the distant hillside where that impossible target waited in the morning haze. That's when Sarah heard his voice for the first time. British accent, educated, the kind of voice that sounded reasonable even when it was cutting you down. That target, he said, pointing toward the 3,400-meter silhouette, has anyone actually hit it, or is it purely theoretical? Colonel Briggs shifted his weight. It's extremely challenging, Major. The wind conditions alone make it nearly impossible on a consistent basis. Interesting. Kane's smile didn't reach his eyes. In Afghanistan, I made a confirmed kill at 2,970 meters. But I suppose conditions in Kentucky are more demanding than Helmand Province. The implication hung in the air like cordite smoke. Americans could set up impressive ranges, but when it came to actually performing under pressure, they came up short. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. That distance, 2,970. He was claiming a shot nearly identical to hers in the same theater, probably around the same time. The odds of that being coincidence were vanishingly small. Kane turned and his gaze swept across the assembled personnel. It landed on Sarah for just a moment. She was standing there with her bucket of brass, dirty fatigues, the slight hitch in how she held her right arm that marked her as damaged goods. His eyes passed over her like she was part of the furniture. Then they came back. "You there," he called out. "With the bucket, set up a fresh target at 1,800 meters. Sarah looked at Colonel Briggs. The colonel nodded. "Yes, sir," she said. Her voice came out flat, neutral, the voice of someone who'd learned that showing emotion was the same as showing weakness. She walked downrange to the target frames, feeling Kane's eyes on her back. The weight of his attention was different from the weight of being invisible. It was worse somehow, like being studied by something that was deciding whether you were prey. When she returned, the demonstration continued. Kane fired several more shots, each one perfect, each one accompanied by commentary designed to sound educational, but carrying an undercurrent of superiority that made Sarah's jaw tighten. "In Her Majesty's service," he said at one point, "we prefer practical demonstrations to theoretical exercises. More shots, more perfect hits, more subtle digs at American training methods." Then Kane said something that made Sarah stop walking. Of course, at 2,847 meters, the wind drift becomes the primary variable. Taliban commander, Helmand Province, 2019. One shot, one kill, convoy saved. That was her shot, her exact distance, her exact target, her exact year. He was claiming her kill. Sarah's hands tightened on the bucket handle. The metal bit into her palm. Around her, soldiers were nodding, impressed, not knowing they were being fed a lie. Colonel Briggs was making notes. The foreign observers were whispering among themselves. Kane's blue eyes found hers again across the distance. This time there was something else in them. Recognition. Challenge. The look of a man who knew exactly what he was doing and dared her to call him out. She set down the bucket. The metallic sound cut through the murmur of conversation. Heads turned. Sarah walked toward the firing line. Each step was measured, deliberate. The pain in her shoulder faded into background noise against the roar of blood in her ears. "Sir," she said, addressing Colonel Briggs. Her voice was steady. "Permission to attempt the 3,400-meter target." The range went silent. It was the kind of silence that happens when the world holds its breath, when the normal order of things suddenly tilts and everyone's trying to figure out which way gravity will pull. Colonel Briggs stared at her. "Beckett, what are you doing?" "Requesting permission to engage the extreme distance target, sir." Kane turned fully toward her now. Up close, he was even more imposing. The kind of presence that filled a room or a battlefield. His expression cycled through surprise to calculation to something that might have been amusement. "I'm sorry," he said, and his tone made it clear he wasn't sorry at all. "Did the range maintenance staff just volunteer for precision shooting?" A few of the British soldiers chuckled. Sarah kept her eyes on Colonel Briggs. "Staff Sergeant Sarah Beckett, sir. 2 tours Afghanistan. Sniper qualified. Longest confirmed kill, 2,847 meters. The chuckling stopped. Kane's expression shifted. The amusement crystallized into something colder. "Interesting. You think you can hit a target at 3,400 meters with equipment you haven't zeroed, in conditions you haven't studied after spending the morning doing manual labor." "I'd like to try, sir." The challenge was laid bare now. Everyone on the range could feel it. This wasn't about the shot anymore. It was about something older and deeper. About being dismissed, about being claimed, about a lie that needed answering. Colonel Briggs looked at Kane. Kane looked at Sarah. The moment stretched. "Very well," Kane said finally. His smile was cold and sharp as a knife edge. "Let's make this interesting. If you miss, you continue your custodial duties without complaint. But if by some miracle you manage to hit the target, I'll personally recommend you for advanced training reinstatement." He paused, letting the offer hang there. "And if you hit center mass, I suppose I owe you an apology, though I assure everyone here that won't be necessary." Sarah nodded once. "I accept those terms, sir." As the observer stepped back to give her room, a figure approached from the side of the range. She recognized him, though they'd never spoken. Master Sergeant Nathan Hale, 65 years old, silver hair, weathered face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the mountains. A relic from another era. A ghost from wars most of these soldiers only read about in history books. He walked right up to her, close enough that only she could hear. "You sure about this?" His voice was quiet, rough. The voice of someone who'd breathed too much smoke and sand and cordite over too many years. "Yes, Master Sergeant." Hale studied her face. Sarah had the strange sensation that he was looking through her, past her, into some memory she didn't share. "You have your father's eyes," he said finally. Same determination, same stubbornness. Sarah felt something cold move through her chest. "You knew my father?" "Thomas Beckett and I served together. Long time ago." He paused. "He was the best shooter I ever saw." Another pause, longer this time. "Until now, perhaps." Before Sarah could process that, before she could ask any of the 1,000 questions suddenly crowding her mind, Hale stepped back and gestured toward the firing line. "Show them what a Beckett can do." Sarah walked to the rifle, standard M24. Good scope, but nothing custom. The weapon showed signs of regular use, well-maintained but not personalized for extreme long-range work. It would have to do. She knelt behind the firing line, settling the rifle on its bipod. For a moment she closed her eyes, let the sounds fade, the whispered conversations, the rustle of uniforms, the distant call of a hawk circling somewhere overhead. When she opened her eyes, the world had narrowed to just her, the rifle, and that distant speck on the hillside. She began her preparation methodically. First, the wind. She could see grass and small bushes at various distances, watching how they moved. Near the firing line, southwest wind, maybe 8 miles per hour. But at longer distances, the vegetation showed the wind shifting, coming more from the west and picking up speed. Behind her, she heard one of the British soldiers whisper, "Poor girl doesn't know what she's gotten into." Kane's voice pitched to Carrie, "Whenever you're ready, Staff Sergeant. We don't have all day." Sarah ignored him. She was calculating now. Bullet drop at this distance would be massive, nearly 400 feet. The wind would push the round several feet right. The humidity from yesterday's rain would slow the bullet slightly, increasing both drop and drift. The 7.62 NATO round would be in the air for almost 5 seconds. 5 seconds for the wind to change, 5 seconds for physics to compound every tiny error into a complete miss. She settled into position, feeling the rifle stock against her shoulder. Through the scope, the target was barely visible. A faint rectangular shape her brain had to work to distinguish from the brown and green hillside behind it. More noise behind her. Kane speaking to one of the journalists who'd shown up for the demonstration. Remarkable that she's even attempting this, given her limited competitive experience. The pressure alone would break most shooters. The comment was designed to rattle her, to break her concentration. Sarah had encountered this kind of psychological warfare before. From enemies. From fellow soldiers who couldn't accept that a woman might be their equal. She'd learned long ago not to let it touch her. Instead, she let memory flood in. Afghanistan, providing overwatch for the convoy. Taliban fighters moving into position. Her spotter's voice, tight with tension. 2847 meters. Wind shifting, you've got one shot. If she'd missed, her friends would have died. It was that simple. She'd made the shot. Perfect hit. The ambush collapsed. The convoy made it through. 3 minutes later, the RPG found them anyway. Shrapnel tore through the open door and into her shoulder. She'd saved them all and still ended up here, picking up brass while other people went to war. Another memory surfaced. Older. Softer. She was 12 years old, standing in the West Virginia mountains with her father. Thomas Beckett had been patient, showing her how to read wind, how to account for elevation, how to become one with the rifle instead of fighting it. "The rifle's just a tool, Katie," he'd said. "The real weapon is the person behind it, their focus, their discipline, their heart." Thomas Beckett had been a SEAL, Team 6. He rarely spoke about those years, but he'd passed on his knowledge through countless weekends of practice, teaching his daughter the craft that had kept him alive through operations in places that didn't exist on any map. By the time Sarah was 16, she could outshoot most grown men. When she joined the Army at 18, her father had given her a small, leather-bound journal. "My notes," he'd said, "things they don't teach in the manuals. Read between the lines." She'd studied that journal for years. Technical details, yes, but also philosophy, the mindset of a true marksman. The weight of responsibility that came with the power to take a life from distances where the target never even knew they were being hunted. Staff Sergeant Beckett, Colonel Briggs' voice carried a note of concern. Are you ready? Sarah settled deeper into position. Through the scope, she could see heat shimmer rising from the ground. Another variable to factor into calculations already complex enough to fill a textbook. One shot? Kane asked, his tone mocking. Or would you prefer a few practice rounds? One shot, Sarah replied without looking up from the scope. Confident, I respect that, even if it's misplaced. Sarah controlled her breathing. Slow, deep breaths from the diaphragm. Her heart rate dropped. The chatter faded further. Everything except the shot ceased to exist. She found her natural point of aim, then made adjustments for wind and distance. Her crosshairs were positioned well above and to the left of the target, so far off that an inexperienced observer might think she was aiming at the wrong hillside entirely. But Sarah knew what she was doing. At this distance, she wasn't aiming at where the target was. She was aiming at where the bullet would be after traveling nearly 5 seconds through variable wind and dropping 400 feet. Wind's picking up, observed one of the spotters. Sarah had noticed. She made a minute adjustment, her hands moving with the unconscious precision of 10,000 hours of practice. Any time now, Staff Sergeant, Kane said, though I suppose there's no shame in admitting this is beyond your capabilities. Sarah tuned him out completely. She was in the zone now, that mental space where nothing existed except the shot. She began her final breathing cycle, a technique her father had taught her when she was 15. He'd called it the Beckett breath. Deep breath in, let half of it out, hold. In that moment of perfect stillness, with her lungs half empty and her heart between beats, she applied the final pressure to the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The sound rolled across the Kentucky morning like thunder, echoing off distant hills and fading into silence. Through the scope, Sarah stayed focused on the target area. At this distance, it would take nearly 4 seconds for the bullet to arrive. 4 seconds that felt like 4 hours. Behind her, she could hear spotters adjusting their telescopes, trying to track the round's impact. The assembled officers held their breath. Even Kane had gone silent. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. I don't see an impact, called out one of the spotters, uncertainty in his voice. Check the target, Colonel Briggs ordered. There was a long pause. The spotter was examining the distant silhouette through his high-powered telescope, trying to determine what had happened in those crucial seconds when physics and skill either aligned or failed. I think I see something, the spotter said finally. It's hard to tell at this distance. What do you mean you think you see something? Kane demanded. The casual demeanor had cracked slightly. Either there's a hit or there isn't. There appears to be a mark on the target, sir, but I can't confirm if it's a bullet hole or just a shadow from this angle. Sarah finally lifted her head from the scope. She'd felt the shot was good. Everything had come together in that perfect moment. The rifle, the wind, the breathing, the trigger squeeze. But at this distance, even a perfect shot could be defeated by factors beyond anyone's control. We'll need to drive out and verify, Colonel Briggs said. The drive took 20 minutes across rough terrain. Sarah sat in the back of a Humvee, hands folded in her lap, face showing nothing of the storm inside. If she'd missed, she'd be the laughingstock of Fort Campbell, the broken soldier who'd gotten above herself, who'd embarrassed not just herself but the entire United States Army in front of foreign dignitaries. But if she'd hit, they approached the target slowly, bouncing over uneven ground. Kane was in the lead vehicle. Sarah could see him through the windshield, posture confident, clearly expecting to prove his point about American overconfidence. The vehicle stopped. Everyone dismounted. The walk to the target felt like walking to a verdict. Kane reached it first. He stood there, staring at the target board. His expression was unreadable. Colonel Briggs came up beside him, examined the target. His eyebrows rose. The range officer pulled out a measuring tape and began documenting the impact point, while a photographer took pictures for the official record. Sarah walked up last, looked at what 4 seconds of bullet flight had created. The hole was 3 inches left of center, perfect elevation. The wind drift had pushed it slightly off the center line, but the vertical placement was exact. Center mass, the range officer confirmed. Wind drift accounted for. This is a confirmed hit at 3,412 meters. The silence that followed was different from the silence before the shot. This was the silence of assumptions being shattered, of calculations being rewritten, of a world that had been ordered one way suddenly shifting to accommodate new data. Kane stared at the bullet hole. His jaw was tight. When he spoke, his voice had lost its casual superiority. Exceptional shooting, Staff Sergeant. It wasn't an apology. It was barely an acknowledgement, but it was something. Sarah nodded once. Knowing. One of the American officers, a captain she didn't know, was examining the target more closely. Sir, he said, looking at Kane, given the wind conditions and the distance, this shot is almost exactly where it should be for a perfect center mass aim point. The bullet drift puts it slightly left, which is precisely what you'd expect with the crosswind we measured. Sarah allowed herself the smallest of smiles. He was right. She hadn't been aiming for the left side of the target. She'd aimed for dead center and let physics do the rest. The wind had pushed the bullet left exactly as she'd calculated. Kane's expression darkened. Indeed, a noteworthy shot. Of course, anyone can get lucky. Lucky, sir. Sarah spoke for the first time since taking the shot. Her voice was quiet but clear. With respect, luck doesn't account for wind calculation, bullet drop compensation, and atmospheric conditions. That was a calculated shot based on training and experience. Kane turned to face her fully. His blue eyes were cold, assessing. You don't look old enough to have much of either. Started competitive shooting at 12, sir, 8 years in the Army, 2 combat tours, 47 confirmed kills, including 6 at ranges over 1,500 meters. The numbers hung in the air. Sarah wasn't boasting. She was stating facts. But facts could cut deeper than insults. Colonel Briggs cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. I think we can all agree that was an exceptional demonstration of marksmanship. But Kane wasn't finished. He stepped closer to Sarah. His height gave him a physical advantage he clearly intended to use. Staff Sergeant Beckett, he said, what exactly are you doing collecting shell casings if you're such an accomplished sniper? The question hit like a slap. Sarah felt all eyes on her. American, British, everyone waiting to see how she would respond. The truth would make her look weak, but lying wasn't an option. I was wounded in action, sir, she said. Her voice stayed steady despite the shame threatening to overwhelm her. Took shrapnel in my right shoulder during extraction. The Army Medical Board determined I was no longer fit for combat duties. So they relegated you to custodial work. Kane's smile was cold. Someone has to do it, I suppose. Yes, sir. Indeed. His tone dripped with false sympathy, though I have to wonder if the American military is making the best use of its resources. In the British Army, we find ways to utilize experienced soldiers even when they can't serve on the front lines. The implication was clear. The Americans were wasteful, inefficient. They'd taken one of their best assets and reduced her to manual labor because of bureaucratic inflexibility. And the worst part was he was right. The drive back to the main facility was silent, but something had shifted. The soldiers who'd barely acknowledged Sarah's existence now looked at her differently. The range officer who'd been documenting the shot kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She'd proved something, but she wasn't sure what or to whom. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her barracks room. The small space was Spartan, regulation everything. A cot, a footlocker, a desk with a lamp. The only personal item was a framed photo of her father in his dress blues, taken sometime in the 90s before the lines had settled deep around his eyes. She pulled her father's journal from the footlocker. Brown leather, worn soft from years of handling. She'd read it cover to cover dozens of times, memorizing every diagram, every calculation, every note in the margins. But tonight, she looked at it differently, because of what Hale had said. Thomas Beckett and I served together. Her father had died when she was 19. Sudden heart attack, the doctor said. A 46-year-old man in excellent physical condition. Dead from cardiac arrest with no warning signs. At the time, grief had overwhelmed questions. Now, 9 years later, those questions were starting to surface. She flipped through the pages. Technical material mostly. Wind reading techniques, ballistic calculations, range estimation methods. But scattered throughout were sequences of numbers that had never made sense, labeled as wind correction factors, but with no corresponding explanations. The numbers didn't follow any patterns she recognized from ballistics. They seemed almost random, which meant they probably weren't random at all. There was a knock at her door. Sarah closed the journal and stood. Enter. The door opened. Captain Riley Wade stepped inside. She knew him by reputation. Army Ranger. Tough. Professional. He'd been at the demonstration today, watching from the sidelines. Staff Sergeant, he said, got a minute? Yes, sir. Riley closed the door behind him. He looked uncomfortable. like a man about to say something he'd rehearsed but still wasn't sure about. Hell of a shot today, he said. I've been in the Army 15 years. Never seen anything like it. Thank you, sir. Riley studied the floor for a moment, then looked up. I owe you an explanation. When they assigned you to range detail, I figured you were just another broken soldier the system didn't know what to do with. I was wrong about that. Sarah waited. There was more coming. My brother was Corporal Sean Wade, killed in Kunar Province, Afghanistan, 2015. The name stirred something in Sarah's memory. Kunar Province, 2015. She'd been stateside then, between deployments. But she remembered hearing about it. An ambush, bad intelligence, Americans killed. The mission was commanded by Thomas Beckett, Riley continued. His voice was carefully neutral. SEAL Team 6 operation. Intel was bad. My brother and 5 others walked into a kill zone. Your father got a reprimand. Sean got a flag on his coffin. Sarah felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her feet. Sir, I didn't know. Why would you? You were what, 19? 20? Riley's expression wasn't angry, just tired. I'm not telling you this to blame you for your father's mistakes. I'm telling you because Kane's been asking questions. About you, about Thomas Beckett, about what happened in Kunar. What kind of questions? The kind men like Kane ask when they need something. I don't know what game he's playing, but you're a piece on his board now, and I thought you should know that before you make any decisions. Riley moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, that shot today, that was skill, not luck. Don't let anyone tell you different. He left. Sarah sat back down on her cot, the journal heavy in her hands. 2 hours later, there was another knock. This time, Sarah wasn't surprised when she opened the door and found Nathan Hale standing there. The old master sergeant had the look of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Walk with me, Hale said. It wasn't a request. They walked in silence to the far edge of the base, where the ranges gave way to woods and the night was thick enough to hide secrets. Hale moved with the quiet of someone who'd spent a lifetime learning not to be heard. Finally, he spoke. Your father and I were spotters for each other. 8 years, 4 continents. Places that don't exist on any official map. SEAL Team 6, Sarah said. Among other things. Hale stopped walking, turned to face her. That journal you keep hidden in your footlocker, the one with the number sequences you can't decipher, I can help with that. Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm. How do you know about the journal? Because I helped Thomas write parts of it. The technical material, that's his. But the codes, those are ours, his and mine. A precaution. Against what? Hale looked out into the darkness. Against the people who killed him. The words hung in the cold November air. Sarah's heart was hammering now. My father died of a heart attack. Is that what they told you? Hale's voice was soft, almost gentle. 46 years old, perfect health. Drops dead 2 days before he's scheduled to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee about illegal covert operations. And you never questioned that? Testify about what? Hale reached into his jacket and pulled out a small book. Field Manual 23-10, the Army's Sniper Training Manual. Every qualified sniper in the U.S. military had a copy. Page 47, paragraph 3. Use that as your key. The numbers in the journal are page numbers, paragraph numbers, word numbers, book cipher, basic but effective. Sarah took the manual. Her hands were shaking now. What will I find? The truth about Operation Nightfall, about what your father discovered, about why he died. Hale turned to walk away, then stopped. Kane invited you to the International Precision Rifle Summit, Smoky Mountains, 3 weeks from now. How do you know that? Because I've been watching you since you got assigned to Fort Campbell, waiting to see if you were ready, if you had your father's skill. Hale's expression was unreadable in the darkness. That shot today answered that question. What's the summit really about? Bait. For you. Kane thinks you have something your father left behind, something he needs, and he's willing to use that summit as cover to get it. Sarah's mind was racing. Cover for what? Hale was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old guilt. There's something else you need to know. Something I should have told you years ago. He stepped closer, close enough that Sarah could see his eyes in the moonlight. They were haunted. Your father didn't die of a heart attack, Hale said. He was murdered, killed by someone he trusted, someone who followed orders instead of conscience. Who? Hale's face was stone. Me, I'm the one who pulled the trigger. The world stopped. Sarah's hand moved to her pistol, drew it, aimed it at Hale's chest. Her finger was on the trigger. The safety was off. Hale didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there, waiting. "Talk," Sarah said. Her voice was ice. "Now." Thomas was going to expose Operation Nightfall, a joint U.S. and UK covert program that eliminated high-value targets beyond legal reach. Started during the Cold War. Necessary evil, we told ourselves. Taking out terrorists, arms dealers, people who threaten global stability. Hale's voice was steady, rehearsed, like he'd been preparing this confession for 9 years. But by 2015, it had evolved, become something else. Kane was running it by then, selling services to the highest bidder. Cartels, oligarchs, corporations, anyone with money and a target. Your father found proof, built a case, was going to testify. So they sent you to kill him. They sent me to bring him in, convince him to stand down. But Thomas wouldn't. He knew what was right, what was necessary. Hale's voice cracked slightly. I had orders, presidential-level authority, classified. I believed in the chain of command. I believed Nightfall was still serving the greater good. So you killed him. I killed him. Made it look like heart attack. Chemical compound, untraceable. Quick. Clean. Hale finally looked away. He asked me to tell you the truth. His last words, tell Katie the zero is cold. Starting over, clean slate. He wanted you to finish what he started, but without his mistakes. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. One pull. That's all it would take. Justice for her father, revenge for 9 years of lies. But her father's voice echoed in her memory. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. She lowered the pistol, didn't holster it, just lowered it. Why tell me this now? Because Kane invited you to that summit for a reason, and you need to understand what you're walking into. Hale met her eyes again. I can train you, get you ready, help you finish what Thomas started. But you need to decide if you can work with the man who killed your father. Why would you help me? Because I owe Thomas that much. Because I've lived with what I did for 9 years. And because Kane needs to be stopped before he sells Nightfall's services to someone who will use it to start a war. Hale paused. Your father was a better man than me. Always was. Maybe you are too. Maybe you can do what's right without becoming what I became. Sarah stood there in the darkness, pistol in hand, looking at the man who'd murdered her father. Every instinct screamed to pull the trigger, to end it here, to find whatever justice could be found in blood and brass. But justice wasn't the mission. The mission was finding the truth, stopping Kane, finishing what her father had started. She holstered the pistol. 3 weeks, she said, you train me. You help me decode that journal. You tell me everything about Nightfall. And when this is over, when Kane's in the ground or in prison, then we'll settle accounts. Hale nodded slowly. Fair enough. Sarah turned to walk back toward the barracks. Stopped. Didn't look back. One question. Did my father know? At the end, did he know it was you? Hale's answer came after a long silence. Yes. He looked me in the eye and said, I forgive you, Nathan, but Katie won't have to. Sarah walked away into the November darkness, leaving Nathan Hale standing alone with his ghosts. Behind her, she heard him speak one more time. So quiet, she almost didn't catch it. Some ghosts choose when to haunt. In her barracks room, Sarah opened the journal with shaking hands, placed the field manual beside it, started decoding. Page 47, paragraph 3. The first sequence of numbers, 142, 3, 7. Page 142, paragraph 3, word 7. Evidence. The next sequence yielded against, then nightfall, then operatives. Word by word, the message emerged. Her father's final testimony, hidden in plain sight for 9 years, waiting for her to find it. By midnight, she had the first full message decoded. Evidence against Nightfall operatives in private assassinations. Hidden in secure server. Access code. Mockingbird 87. Contact Nathan Hale if I don't return. Trust no one in command. Love, Dad. Sarah sat back, the weight of it settling on her shoulders like winter snow. Her father had known he was going to die, had prepared for it, had left her a trail to follow. She turned to the next page of codes, worked through them methodically, her training pushing past the emotion. This message was shorter. Nathan Hale has copies. Summit is the trap. Protect him. Finish what I started. 3 knocks at her door. Sarah closed the journal, stood, hand on her pistol. It's Riley. She opened the door. The captain looked tired, worried. Found something, he said, stepping inside and closing the door. My brother's after-action report from Kunar province. Took me years to get it declassified. Just came through tonight. He handed her a folder. Sarah opened it. Read. The operation had been based on intelligence about a Taliban safe house. High-value target inside. SEAL team insertion. But the intelligence was wrong. The building was empty except for 2 guards. The ambush came from the hills. Coordinated, professional. 6 Americans dead. The intelligence had been provided by a CIA asset, name redacted. But the authorization signature at the bottom of the report wasn't redacted. It was her father's. Sarah looked up at Riley. He authorized the operation. Read the next page. She did. It was Thomas Beckett's own statement, filed 3 days after the ambush. In it, he explained that he'd questioned the intelligence, had requested verification, had been overruled by higher command. The source was considered reliable. The target was high priority. The operation would proceed. The source had been wrong. The target had been a trap. And Thomas Beckett had filed an official complaint about the command structure that had forced him to send men into a kill zone based on intelligence he didn't trust. 2 weeks later, he'd been removed from operational command. 6 months after that, he was dead. He tried to stop it, Sarah said quietly. Riley nodded. Took the blame anyway. That's what the redaction is hiding. Someone up the chain fed him bad intel deliberately, used him to authorize an operation they knew would fail, then hung him out to dry when it went south. Who? That's the question. But I'm starting to think the answer's connected to why Kane's so interested in you. Sarah closed the folder. Her hands were steady now. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture she didn't like, but was starting to understand. The summit, she said. I'm going. You sure that's smart? No, but it's necessary. Riley studied her face. My brother died because someone wanted that mission to fail. Your father died because he tried to expose whoever gave the order. If Kane's involved, if this Nightfall thing is real, then we're not just talking about revenge. We're talking about stopping people who will kill anyone to protect their operation. I know. Then I'm coming with you, as your spotter. Sarah met his eyes, saw the same determination she felt. The same need for truth that transcended grief and anger. Why? Because Sean would have. Riley's jaw was tight. And because if your father was trying to do the right thing, someone should finish it. They shook hands, an alliance forged in shared loss and the promise of answers. After Riley left, Sarah returned to the journal. There were more pages to decode, more messages, more truth. But one phrase kept echoing in her mind. Her father's last words, delivered through the man who'd killed him. The 0 is cold. Starting over. Clean slate. A chance to do what was right without the weight of old mistakes. Sarah looked at the photo of her father in his dress blues. Young, proud. Before the lines and the weight and the knowledge of what the world really was. I'll finish it, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. But I'll do it my way. Outside, the Kentucky night was cold and clear. Somewhere out there, Kane was planning. Hale was remembering. Riley was mourning. And Sarah Beckett was done picking up other people's brass. 3 weeks until the summit. 3 weeks to train. 3 weeks to prepare for whatever trap Kane was setting. She opened the journal to the next coded message and began to decode. The hunt was on, and this ghost was choosing to haunt. The 3 weeks that followed moved like a storm gathering on a distant horizon. Slow at first, then faster, then inevitable. Nathan Hale met Sarah at 0500 hours every morning at a private range 40 miles from Fort Campbell. The facility was old. Built during the Cold War for training that didn't appear in official records. The kind of place that existed in budget line items, but not on maps. The first morning, Hale handed her a rifle. Not the standard M24 she'd used for the demonstration. This was custom built. Every component chosen for a single purpose. Precision at distances where most shooters couldn't even see the target. Your father built this, Hale said. Never got to use it. Seems right that you should. Sarah took the weapon. The weight was perfect. Balanced. The stock fit her shoulder like it had been carved specifically for her body. Maybe it had been. He knew my measurements? He knew everything about you, Katie. Height, arm length, eye dominance. He was building this the year he died. Planning for the day you'd be ready. Sarah ran her hand along the barrel. Cold steel. Unforgiving. Honest in a way people never were. He knew I joined the Army. He knew you were his daughter. That was enough. The training began without ceremony. Hale set up targets at 2,000 meters, then 2,500, then 3,000. Distances where the curvature of the Earth started to matter, where the Coriolis effect from the planet's rotation became part of the calculation. Sarah fired, adjusted, fired again. Her shoulder screamed protest for the first 3 days. The old shrapnel wound remembered every impact, every recoil. But pain was just information. She learned to listen to it without letting it control her. By the end of the first week, she was hitting 9 out of 10 shots at 3,000 meters in variable wind. Hale watched without expression, making notes in a small book that looked older than Sarah. "Your father hit 10 out of 10, he said on the 7th day. "I'm not my father." "No, you're better. He had to work for it. You make it look easy." But it wasn't easy. Nothing about this was easy. Every morning, Sarah decoded more of the journal. Every evening, she studied the messages, trying to understand what her father had discovered, what had been worth dying for. The picture emerged slowly. Operation Nightfall had started in 1987 as a joint U.S. and British program. Eliminate high-value targets that conventional military or law enforcement couldn't touch. Terrorists hiding in countries that wouldn't extradite. Arms dealers with diplomatic immunity. The kind of people who made the world more dangerous by existing. For the first decade, Nightfall had been exactly what it claimed to be. A necessary evil. Surgical strikes that prevented larger conflicts. Thomas Beckett had been one of the original operators. So had Nathan Hale. So had Lucas Kane, back when he was still Lieutenant Stern of the British Army. But something changed after 9/11. The program went fully black. Oversight disappeared. The original operators retired or died. New leadership took over. And slowly, quietly, Nightfall evolved from a scalpel into a weapon for hire. By 2015, the year Thomas Beckett died, Nightfall had become a clearinghouse for contract killings. Cartels paying to eliminate rival leaders. Oligarchs settling business disputes with bullets instead of lawyers. Corporations removing whistleblowers. All of it hidden behind the infrastructure of a legitimate counterterrorism program. Thomas had discovered the client list. Names, dates, payment records. Evidence that would have destroyed careers and sent people to prison for life. He'd planned to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Expose everything, shut it down. 2 days before the hearing, he was dead. Sarah sat in her barracks room on the 10th night, reading the decoded messages by lamplight. Her father's handwriting filled the margins of the journal. Notes about targets that didn't match official threat assessments. Questions about payment routing. Observations about operators who seemed more interested in money than mission. One entry stood out, dated 3 months before his death. Kane is selling access. Confirmed through back channels. Klein and Juarez paid $500,000 for cartel hit disguised as counter-narcotics op. Kane's team executed. Official report classified. This has to stop. But how? Who can I trust? Agency is compromised. DOD won't touch it. Senate is the only option. God help me. Sarah closed the journal. Her father had known the risk, had walked into it anyway because it was the right thing to do. And it had killed him. She wondered if she was walking the same path. If 3 weeks from now, someone would be reading her notes and asking the same questions. Riley Wade appeared at her door on the 12th night. He had a laptop under his arm and an expression that meant he'd found something he didn't like. "We need to talk," he said. They went to a secure room in the intelligence building. Riley pulled up files on the laptop. Classified documents he'd accessed through channels Sarah didn't ask about. "The summit," Riley said, "International Precision Rifle Competition. Smoky Mountain Tactical Center. 12 countries participating. Looks legitimate. Sanctioned by the Department of Defense. Sponsored by 3 major defense contractors. But the keynote speaker is Senator William Hale, Nathan's brother, former CIA director, currently serving on the Senate Intelligence Committee." Sarah felt ice move through her chest. "He's testifying about Nightfall. Next month, closed session, but words leaked. There are rumors he has evidence about illegal covert operations, unauthorized killings, the whole thing." Riley pulled up another file. A blueprint. Sarah recognized it immediately. Roanoke Convention Center, 200 miles from the Smoky Mountain facility. Senator Hale is giving a public speech here the same day as the final competition event. Security conference. Law enforcement officials from 6 states. Media coverage. The works. Kane's real target. Has to be. The competition is cover. Get the world's best snipers in one location. Create chaos and distraction. Take the shot during the confusion. Frame someone else. Frame me. Riley nodded. You're perfect for it. Daughter of a disgraced operator. Wounded, angry, looking for revenge. Kane invites you to the summit, waits for you to make the shot, then plants evidence. You get blamed for assassinating a U.S. senator. Kane eliminates a witness and a potential threat in one move. Sarah stared at the blueprint. Distances marked, angles calculated. 3 potential sniper positions highlighted in red. He's planned this for months, probably since the moment he heard about your father's daughter serving in the army. You were always part of the plan. The shot at Fort Campbell just accelerated the timeline. Sarah pulled the laptop closer, studied the positions. One was a hotel room 1,100 meters northeast of the convention center. Perfect elevation, clear line of sight. The second was a parking garage 850 meters southwest. Lower angle, but still viable. The third was a courthouse rooftop 900 meters due north. 3 positions, she said quietly. Primary, secondary, backup. Or 3 different shooters. Kane doesn't leave things to chance. Sarah thought about that. 3 shooters meant 3 chances to kill Senator Hale. It also meant 3 chances to frame her. All Kane needed was for her rifle to match ballistics from one of the positions. She'd be tied to the scene whether she was actually there or not. We need to tell someone, FBI, DOD, someone. Riley shook his head. With what evidence? Blueprints on a laptop I'm not supposed to have access to? Theories based on decoded messages from a journal that legally doesn't exist? Kane's covered his tracks. Every official document makes the summit look legitimate. Then what do? We go, we play along, we get close enough to gather real evidence, and we stop him before he takes that shot. Sarah looked at Riley, saw the determination there, the same need for justice she felt. His brother had died because of bad intelligence. Her father had died trying to expose the people who'd provided it. They were connected now by blood and purpose. You don't have to do this, she said. Yeah, I do. Sean would have. They spent the next hour planning. Routes in and out of the summit facility, communication protocols, contingency plans if things went wrong. By the time Riley left, Sarah had a headache from the weight of variables and possibilities. She returned to training the next morning with new focus. This wasn't just about shooting anymore. It was about survival, about walking into a trap with eyes open and still finding a way to spring it on the person who'd set it. Hale noticed the change. Riley told you about the senator. You knew? I helped William build his case. Provided him with evidence, copies of what Thomas had gathered. Hale adjusted the spotting scope, checking wind flags downrange. My brother's testimony will destroy Nightfall. Every operator, every handler, every politician who looked the other way. It all ends. Unless Kane kills him first. Unless that, Sarah settled behind the rifle. 3,000 meters, wind gusting from multiple directions. A shot that would test everything she'd learned. Why didn't you testify yourself, she asked. Hale was quiet for a long time. Because I'm compromised. I killed Thomas. Kane knows it. He has proof. If I testify, he'll destroy my credibility by revealing what I did. But William's clean. His evidence is solid. His testimony will hold up. So your brother is bait. We're all bait for something. Hale's voice was tired, old. The question is whether we're bait for the right cause. Sarah fired. The round took nearly 5 seconds to reach the target. Through the spotting scope, Hale watched the impact. Center mass, that's 10 for 10 today. Sarah stood, looked at Hale across the rifle. When this is over, when the senator testifies and Nightfall is exposed, we still have unfinished business. I know. I haven't decided if I'm going to kill you. I know that too. Hale met her eyes. For what it's worth, whatever you decide, I won't fight it. I made my choice 9 years ago. Now you get to make yours. The honesty was almost harder to bear than the lies had been. Sarah wanted to hate this man, needed to hate him, but hatred required simple clarity, and nothing about this was simple. She packed up the rifle. Tomorrow we practice close quarters. If Kane's planning an ambush at the summit, shooting from distance won't be enough. Hale nodded. I'll set it up. That night, Sarah decoded the final pages of the journal. The last message was dated 2 days before her father's death. Katie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I was alive. Sorry I couldn't be there to see the woman you've become, but I need you to know that everything I did because it was right. Not easy, not safe. Right. Nathan Hale will tell you he killed me. It's true. But it's not the whole truth. I asked him to. I knew they were coming. Knew they'd make it messy if they sent anyone else. Nathan made it quick, clean, painless. In his own way, he gave me a gift. The evidence is on a server. Access code Mockingbird 87. Everything Nightfall has done for the past 30 years. Use it wisely. Trust your training. Trust your heart. And remember that the hardest shot is the one you don't take. The zero is cold, Katie. Start fresh. Do better than I did. I love you. I'm proud of you. Fire and vanish. Dad. Sarah read the words 3 times. 4. Trying to reconcile the father she remembered with the man who'd planned his own death, who'd asked his best friend to kill him to avoid something worse. She thought about what worse might mean. Torture for information. Public trial to discredit his evidence. Family threatened. Her mother, who'd died from cancer when Sarah was 16, harassed in her final months. Thomas Beckett had chosen the quick death to protect everyone he loved, and he trusted Nathan Hale to deliver it. Sarah closed the journal. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. The anger had crystallized into something colder, more focused. Purpose. She would go to the summit. She would walk into Kane's trap. She would get the evidence from the server, and she would finish what her father started. But she would do it her way, without the mistakes, without the compromises, clean. The zero was cold. Time to start over. The day before departure, Dmitry Kozlov appeared at the training range. Sarah had never met him, but Hale had described him. Former Spetsnaz, Russian by birth, American by choice. His son had died in Ukraine 3 years ago, collateral damage from a Nightfall hit disguised as a rebel attack. Kozlov was in his 50s, barrel-chested, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent too many years in places that didn't forgive weakness. His handshake was firm. His eyes were hard. Nathan tells me you are Thomas Beckett's daughter, he said. His English was accented but clear. I knew your father. He was good man, rare in this business. Thank you. Kane put bounty on Nightfall evidence, $2 million. Every contractor in Europe knows someone is coming for it. Market is watching. Sarah absorbed this information. How many people are looking? At least a dozen, maybe more. Some want money. Some want revenge. Some just want to watch world burn. Kozlov pulled out a small device. Looked like a phone, but probably wasn't. This is encrypted communicator. Untraceable. Take it. If you need extraction, if anything goes wrong, you call. I will come. Why would you help me? Kozlov's expression darkened. Because my son was 19. Student. Wrong place, wrong time. Nightfall shooter put round through minister's car. Bullet passed through, hit Alexei in chest. He died before ambulance arrived. The old Russian's hands clenched into fists. Kane signed authorization. I saw documents. My son's death was acceptable collateral damage for $750,000 contract. So yes, I help you. I help anyone who puts Kane in ground or in prison, preferably ground. Sarah took the communicator. I'm not planning to kill Kane. Plans change in combat, trust me on this. After Kozlov left, Riley arrived with final logistics. They would drive to the summit separately, arrive at different times, maintain the appearance of not knowing each other. Riley would be listed as her designated spotter for the competition, but officially they'd only just met. Hale's coming too, Riley said, as an observer. Retired Master Sergeant watching the next generation. Gives him cover to be on site without raising flags. And Kozlov? Private contractor. DOD hired him as a security consultant for the international attendees. He'll have access to most areas. Sarah checked her gear one final time. Rifle, ammunition, rangefinder, weather instruments, the tools of her trade, each one familiar as her own heartbeat. But she also packed things that had nothing to do with shooting. Lockpicks, a small tablet with hacking software, a camera for documenting evidence. This wasn't just a competition. It was an intelligence operation. And she was walking in alone. The drive to Smoky Mountain Tactical Center took 6 hours through mountain roads that twisted like questions without answers. Sarah drove in silence, watching the landscape change from Kentucky bluegrass to Tennessee hills to the ancient mountains that gave the facility its name. The center itself was impressive. Built into the side of a mountain, the main building looked like it had grown from the rock. Modern architecture blended with natural stone. Ranges extended up the mountainside at various elevations, taking advantage of the terrain to create shooting scenarios that couldn't be replicated anywhere else. 12 national teams were already there when Sarah arrived. Germans, Swedes, Canadians, Australians, Japanese, Israelis, the best military snipers from allied nations, gathered to test their skills and share techniques. And somewhere among them, Kane's people, watching, waiting. Sarah checked into her assigned quarters, small but functional, a bed, a desk, a locker, window overlooking the ranges. She swept the room for listening devices, found two, left them in place. Let Kane hear whatever he wanted. She'd give him nothing useful. The opening ceremony was scheduled for 1800 hours. Sarah changed into dress uniform, checked herself in the mirror. Staff Sergeant Sarah Beckett, 28 years old, 2 tours, 47 confirmed kills, medical discharge pending, here to prove she still had value. That was the story everyone would see. The broken soldier trying to reclaim her place. It was a good story, sympathetic. The kind of story that made people root for the underdog. It was also bait. The ceremony took place in the main hall. Flags from 12 nations hung from the ceiling. Officers in dress uniforms filled the seats. At the front, on a raised platform, sat the VIP section. Defense contractors, military brass, politicians, and Senator William Hale. Sarah hadn't known what to expect. Nathan Hale's brother was older, late 60s, with gray hair and the careful posture of someone who'd spent decades in Washington learning to measure every word and gesture. But his eyes were the same as Nathan's, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. Those eyes found Sarah in the crowd, held her gaze for just a moment, a silent acknowledgement. Then he looked away. Lucas Kane stood to give the opening address. He wore his dress uniform like armor, every ribbon and medal positioned exactly. His voice filled the hall with practiced ease. Welcome to the International Precision Rifle Summit. For the next 5 days, you will test your skills against the finest marksmen in the world. You will learn from each other, challenge each other, forge bonds that transcend national boundaries. It was a good speech, inspiring, the kind of speech that made people believe in international cooperation and shared purpose. Sarah watched Kane's face as he spoke, saw the calculation behind the smile, the predator beneath the professional veneer. He was enjoying this, the theater of it, the game. But this summit is more than a competition, Kane continued. It is a reminder that precision saves lives. That one shot, carefully placed, can prevent wars, can protect the innocent, can serve justice where law cannot reach. The irony was almost beautiful. Kane describing Nightfall's original mission while using the event as cover to pervert everything it had stood for. His eyes swept the crowd, found Sarah, held her gaze. Some of you are here to prove yourselves, to show that injury or setback hasn't diminished your skills. To those soldiers, I say this: the measure of a warrior is not whether they fall, but whether they rise. Applause filled the hall. Sarah didn't clap, just watched Kane watching her. 2 predators circling, both waiting for the other to make the first mistake. After the ceremony, Kane approached her directly. No pretense, no games. Staff Sergeant Beckett, I'm pleased you accepted my invitation. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. That shot at Fort Campbell was remarkable. I've been thinking about it quite a bit. He smiled. In fact, I've been thinking about your father quite a bit as well. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Sir? Thomas Beckett, SEAL Team 6, excellent operator, unfortunate end. Heart attack, sir, 9 years ago. Yes, tragic. He was scheduled to testify before Congress, if I recall correctly, about some classified program, never got the chance. The threat was laid bare now. Kane knew what Thomas had planned, knew what Sarah knew. This was him confirming that the trap was set and she'd walked into it exactly as planned. I wouldn't know about that, sir. I was 19. Of course. Kane's smile widened. Well, I look forward to seeing you compete. The first event begins tomorrow. 800 meters, known distance. Should be well within your capabilities. He walked away. Sarah felt Riley's presence beside her before she saw him. That was a threat, Riley said quietly. That was a promise. That night, Sarah met Hale and Riley in a maintenance building far from the main facility. Kozlov was already there, studying blueprints spread across a workbench. Security is good, Kozlov said. Professional, but not paranoid. They expect threats from outside, not inside. This works for us. Hale pointed to the blueprints. Kane's quarters are here. 3rd floor, east wing. Electronic lock. Guard rotation every 4 hours. The server with Nightfall files is probably in his room or in a secure facility on site. We need that access code, Riley said. Mockingbird 87. Without it, the server's encrypted. Sarah pulled out her father's journal. It's more than just an access code. It's a verification key. The server won't just open. It'll verify the person accessing it has authorization. How? Biometric. Probably fingerprint or retinal scan. Sarah flipped through the journal pages. My father's notes mention a backup verification. Voice authentication, a specific phrase he recorded. Which is? Sarah found the page, read the words her father had written. The 0 is cold. The room went silent. Hale closed his eyes. He planned for everything. So we get into Kana's quarters, access the server, use the voice authentication, and download the evidence. Riley made it sound simple. Then what? Then we make sure Senator Hale lives long enough to present it to the Senate, Sarah said. Kozlov pulled out photos. I have identified 3 British soldiers who arrived with Kane, Special Air Service, all with sniper qualification. Callum Shaw is most dangerous. 26 confirmed kills. Specialty is urban hide sites. He spread out 3 photos. Shaw was young, maybe 30, with cold eyes and the compact build of someone who'd spent years training for violence. The other 2 were older, harder. Shaw will take primary shot at Senator, Kozlov continued. Other 2 provide overwatch and extraction. Standard 3-man team. Where? Hotel room, 1,100 meters from Convention Center in Roanoke. Shaw checked in yesterday under false name. Room has clear line of sight to podium. Sarah studied the photo, memorizing the face. When does the senator speak? Day 5 of Summit. Final competition event runs simultaneously. Maximum distraction. So we have 4 days, Riley said. We have 4 days to gather evidence, identify all of Kane's assets, and figure out how to stop an assassination without getting ourselves killed. Sarah looked at each of them. Anyone want to back out? Nobody moved. Good. Because we're not just doing this for our families anymore. We're doing it for everyone Nightfall has killed. Everyone they will kill if we don't stop them. The first competition event began at 800 hours the next morning. 800 meters. Known distance. Static targets. 20 shooters, 5 minutes each. Sarah shot 15th. She took her time. Controlled breathing. Steady trigger pull. Hit all 5 targets, center mass. Good score. Not exceptional. Exactly what she wanted. Kane watched from the observation platform. When Sarah finished, he nodded approval. She was performing as expected. Good enough to be credible. Not so good as to draw excessive attention. The second day brought fieldcraft challenges, moving through terrain, shooting from improvised positions, unknown distances. Sarah finished 3rd overall. The Swedish shooter, a woman named Lindstrom, took 1st. Shaw took 2nd. On the 3rd day, the competition moved to longer ranges, 1,500 meters. Variable wind. Sarah's shoulder began to protest. The old injury reminding her it was still there, still damaged, still a weakness Kane could exploit. She fired through the pain, hit 8 out of 10 targets, 5th place overall, respectable, forgettable. That night, while the other competitors were at a reception, Sarah and Riley broke into Kane's quarters. The lock was electronic, military grade, but Riley had brought equipment that made it irrelevant. 20 seconds and the door clicked, open. Inside, the room was exactly what Sarah expected. Neat, organized, everything in its place. A laptop on the desk, encrypted, a locked case under the bed, probably weapons. Photos on the wall, Kane with various dignitaries and military personnel. And in the closet, hidden behind a false panel, a small server. Sarah pulled it out, connected her tablet, entered the access code, Mockingbird 87. The screen lit up. Voice authentication required. Sarah pulled up the recording she'd made. Her own voice, speaking the words her father had written. The 0 is cold. The server accepted it. Files began appearing on the tablet. Thousands of them. Operations, targets, financial records, client lists. Everything Thomas Beckett had died to expose. Sarah was downloading when Riley hissed a warning. Someone's coming. They had maybe 30 seconds. Sarah disconnected the tablet, closed the server panel, moved toward the door. But footsteps were already in the hallway. They couldn't leave without being seen. Riley pointed to the bathroom. Small window, barely large enough for a person. 3-story drop to the ground below. No choice. Sarah went first. Squeezed through the window, hung from the sill for a moment, then dropped. landed hard, rolled. Her shoulder screamed protest. Riley came down beside her a second later. They were moving before Kane's door opened, before whoever was checking his room discovered anything amiss. By the time they reached their own quarters, Sarah's shoulder was on fire. Riley helped her inside, closed the door. "Did you get it all?" Sarah checked the tablet. 70%. Enough to verify everything my father claimed. Enough to end this. "Then we call the FBI. Turn it over. Let them handle Kane." "No." Sarah's voice was hard. "Not yet. If we reveal what we have now, Kane disappears. He's got resources, safe houses, false identities. We expose Nightfall before we have him in custody. He vanishes and starts over somewhere else. So what's the play?" Sarah pulled up the files, started scanning through them. Operation names, dates, targets, a history of murder dressed up as national security. Then she found it. Operation Cordova, Kunar Province, Afghanistan. 2015, target, Taliban safe house. Authorization, Thomas Beckett. Intelligence source, redacted. Payment, $350,000. Client, redacted. She pulled up the mission report, read the details. The ambush. The 6 dead Americans. Riley's brother among them. The intelligence source that had been redacted in the official report was listed here. Clear as day. Senator William Hale. Sarah felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Riley, you need to see this." He read over her shoulder. She watched his face change. Watched realization hit like a bullet finding its mark. "The senator," Riley said slowly. "Nathan Hale's brother. He provided the intelligence that killed Sean." Sarah kept reading. The truth assembled itself from fragments of data. William Hale had been CIA director in 2015. He'd been running his own network of assets in Afghanistan. One of those assets had been doubled, working for both the CIA and the Taliban, feeding false intelligence. When William discovered the betrayal, he tried to shut it down quietly. Couldn't let it go public. Couldn't admit that his asset had compromised multiple operations. So he'd arranged for the asset to be eliminated in a way that looked like a Taliban operation gone bad. He'd authorized a SEAL team hit on a fake target, knowing the Taliban would be waiting, knowing Americans would die, accepting that cost to protect his own reputation. Thomas Beckett had been the fall guy, the SEAL commander who'd questioned the intelligence but been overruled, who'd filed the complaint afterward, who'd been silenced before he could testify about where that intelligence really came from. "William Hale killed them," Riley said. His voice was empty, hollow. "Killed my brother to cover up his own mistake. Then let your father take the blame. And when my father discovered the truth, discovered that Nightfall was being used for personal vendettas and political cover-ups, William had him killed too." They sat in silence, the weight of it pressing down like mountains. "Nathan knew," Sarah said quietly. "That's why he pulled the trigger. Not to protect Nightfall, to protect his brother." Riley stood, paced. His hands were shaking. "So the senator we're trying to save, the man who's supposed to expose Nightfall and bring justice, he's the one who started all of this. Kane knows. That's why he's planning to kill William. Not to silence a whistleblower, to eliminate a rival, someone who knows too much and might cut a deal." Sarah's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. William's testimony isn't about exposing Nightfall. It's about controlling the narrative. He'll admit the program exists, claim he was trying to shut it down, make himself the hero while burying his own crimes. And Kane won't let that happen. No, he'll kill William, frame me for it, then use the chaos to disappear with all the evidence that proves William was involved from the start. Riley stopped pacing, looked at Sarah. "So what do we do? Let Kane kill a man who deserves it? Or save a murderer to expose a bigger murderer?" Sarah thought about her father, about the choice he'd made, standing up for what was right even when it cost everything. "We stop Kane," she said. "We save William. And then we make sure he faces justice for what he did." "How?" Sarah pulled up the files again, started organizing. Evidence of William's involvement, evidence of Kane's operations, evidence that would destroy both of them. "We give the FBI everything, but not before the senator testifies. We let him think he's getting away with it. Let him walk into that hearing room. Then we burn him and Kane both." "That's cold." "The zero is cold," Sarah said. "That's the point." The 4th day of competition brought the ultra-long-range event, 3,600 meters, through mountain thermals and unpredictable wind, the shot that would define the summit. Sarah approached the firing line with new purpose. This wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about maintaining cover long enough to finish the mission. Shaw shot first, Hit. The crowd applauded. Lindstrom shot second. Hit. More applause. Sarah's turn came. She settled behind the rifle, found the target through the scope, barely visible, a speck against the mountainside. She ran the calculations, wind, elevation, temperature, everything her father had taught her. Everything Hale had refined. Then she deliberately missed. Aimed 2 feet right, let the shot go, watched through the scope as the bullet impacted dirt 30 meters off target. The crowd gasped. Kane smiled. Sarah stood, showed nothing. The broken soldier cracking under pressure. Exactly what Kane expected to see. After the event, Hale found her. What are you doing? Playing the part. Kane thinks I'm unstable, unreliable, good enough to be useful but not good enough to be a threat. You threw that shot on purpose. I threw it perfectly, exactly where I aimed. Hale studied her face, saw something there that made him nod slowly. You're your father's daughter. He did the same thing once, made everyone think he was finished, then came back when they weren't looking. Did it work? He's dead, so probably not. That night, Kane came to Sarah's quarters. Didn't knock, just walked in. The message clear. He owned this place, owned everyone in it. Difficult day, he said, sympathetic, understanding. The pressure got to you. Yes, sir. It happens, even to the best. He moved closer. I wanted to speak with you about tomorrow. Sir, the final event is ceremonial. A demonstration shoot at extreme range, not scored, just for the spectators. Kane's eyes were ice. I'd like you to participate. Show everyone that today's miss was an anomaly. I'm not sure I'm ready, sir. Oh, I think you are. In fact, I insist. His smile was cold. Consider it a direct order. After he left, Sarah checked the tablet. New files had appeared in the Nightfall server, updated within the last hour. She opened them, read, felt cold certainty settle in her chest. Operation Roanoke. Target, Senator William Hale. Primary shooter, Callum Shaw. Secondary, Sarah Beckett, unknowing asset. Cover, International Precision Rifle Summit. Execution, Day 5, 1400 hours. Payment, $2 million, anonymous client. Kane had updated the files to include her, making it official, making sure that when investigators eventually cracked the server, they'd find evidence of her involvement. The trap was set. Tomorrow, Senator Hale would die. Sarah would be blamed. Kane would disappear. And Nightfall would continue operating with new leadership and better security. Unless she changed the ending. Sarah called Riley and Hale to her room, showed them the files, watched their expressions harden. We're out of time, Riley said. The speech is tomorrow at 1400, same time as the final demonstration. We need to move now. Agreed. Sarah pulled up the blueprint of Roanoke Convention Center. Shaw's in position. Hotel room 1100 meters. He'll take the shot while everyone's watching the demonstration. So we stop him, Hale said. Not we. Me. Sarah's voice was firm. You two need to be at the demonstration, visible. Alibis. When this goes down, Kane will look for conspirators. You need to be somewhere he can see you. You can't take Shaw alone, Riley protested. I'm not going to fight him. I'm going to beat him to the shot. She pulled up a different location on the blueprint. Parking garage, 850 meters southwest of the podium. I'll be here. Counter sniper position. When Shaw lines up his shot, I'll take him out. Take him out how? Hale asked. Kill shot? Sarah thought about her father's words. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. I'm going to shoot his rifle, disable it, make him miss. That's impossible. 850 meters, hitting a rifle instead of a person? You'd need to thread a bullet through a 2-inch window. I made a 3,400-meter shot with equipment I'd never zeroed. 850 is easy. And if you miss, then Senator Hale dies and Kane wins, so I won't miss. Riley and Hale exchanged looks. The kind of look men share when they know someone's about to do something impossibly dangerous and there's no point arguing. What do you need from us? Riley asked. Kozlov, tell him to be ready for extraction. Once I take that shot, Kane will know exactly where I am. I'll need a way out. Done. Sarah spent the rest of the night at preparing, checking equipment, running calculations, planning escape routes. When dawn came, she was ready. The final demonstration began at 1300 hours. 12 shooters, extreme range targets. Spectators filled the observation platforms, cameras rolling, the perfect distraction. Sarah wasn't among the shooters. She'd left the facility an hour earlier, driving the route to Roanoke. 90 minutes through mountain roads. Arrived at the parking garage at 12:30. The structure was mostly empty. Office workers at lunch. Perfect. She made her way to the top level. Set up position behind a concrete barrier. 850 meters to the convention center. She could see the podium through her scope, see security personnel, see the crowd gathering. At 13:45, Senator William Hale took the stage. Sarah watched him through the scope. This man had caused her father's death, had killed Riley's brother, had used Nightfall for personal gain while claiming to oppose it. Part of her wanted him dead, wanted Kane to succeed, wanted justice delivered by a bullet instead of a courtroom. But that wasn't her father's way. Thomas Beckett had believed in right and wrong even when the lines blurred, even when doing the right thing cost everything. Sarah would honor that, would save a guilty man to expose a greater evil, would choose the hard path because it was the only one worth walking. At 13:55, she spotted movement in the hotel window. Shaw settling into position, 1,100 meters away, too far for anyone else to see, but Sarah saw everything. She watched him check his rifle, adjust his scope, begin his breathing routine. Senator Hale began his speech, words about security, about cooperation, about the challenges facing law enforcement in the modern age. All of it hollow, all of it lies. But the crowd didn't know that. Shaw's finger moved to the trigger. Sarah had one chance, one shot. If she missed, a U.S. senator died. If she hit, she exposed herself to Kane. Either way, everything changed after this. She found her breath, the Beckett breath, the technique passed down from her grandfather through her father to her. Deep breath in, let half of it out, hold. In that moment of perfect stillness, Sarah squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. The round flew, 850 meters through mountain air. Through her scope, Sarah saw Shaw's rifle explode. The bullet struck the barrel, shattered the scope, sent glass and metal flying. Shaw jerked back, blood on his face from scope fragments. His shot went wild, missed the senator by 20 feet, buried itself in the wall behind the podium. Security swarmed. The senator was rushed off stage. Chaos erupted. Sarah was already moving, broke down the rifle, packed it, headed for the stairs. She made it 2 levels down before she heard footsteps above. Multiple people, moving fast, professional. Kane's security team. They tracked the shot, found her position. Sarah ran, hit the ground level. The encrypted communicator buzzed, Kozlov's voice. Exit east, black SUV, 30 seconds. She burst out of the garage, spotted the SUV, Kozlov at the wheel, dove into the passenger seat. They were moving before the door closed. Behind them, Kane's team emerged from the garage. Too late. Drive, Sarah said. Kozlov smiled. Was grim thing, more threat than humor. Is good day. Senator lives. Shaw fails. Kane very angry. He'll come after us. Let him try. They drove for 2 hours. Changed vehicles 3 times. Used routes Kozlov had scouted in advance. By the time they stopped at a safe house in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Sarah was certain they weren't followed. Inside, Riley and Hale were waiting, along with someone Sarah didn't expect. Senator William Hale sat at the table, flanked by 2 FBI agents. He looked older than he had on stage, smaller, the weight of his crimes visible in the slump of his shoulders. Staff Sergeant Beckett, one of the FBI agents, said, "Special Agent Morrison, we've been in contact with your colleagues. They've provided us with extensive evidence regarding Operation Nightfall." Sarah looked at Riley and Hale. Both nodded. "We gave them everything," Riley said. "The files from the server, your father's journal, all of it." Senator Hale wouldn't meet Sarah's eyes. "You saved my life, even knowing what I'd done." "Why?" Sarah set down her rifle case. "Because my father believed in justice. Real justice. Not revenge. You'll face trial for your crimes, answer for every person who died because of your decisions. That's worth more than a bullet." "Kane will disappear," the senator said quietly. "He has resources, safe houses. He'll vanish and rebuild." "No," Sarah said, "he won't." She pulled out the tablet, showed the FBI agent. "This has everything, every Nightfall operation, every client, every payment, and it has Kane's location right now." The agent's eyes widened. "How?" "I planted a tracker in his quarters. 4th day of the summit. He's still at the facility, probably just finding out his plan failed." Agent Morrison made a call, spoke quickly, then nodded to Sarah. "FBI's moving on the facility now. We'll have him in custody within the hour." Sarah sat down. The adrenaline was fading now, the exhaustion moving in. She'd done it, finished what her father started, exposed Nightfall, saved a senator, stopped an assassination. But the cost was still there, the weight of everything she'd learned, everything she'd lost. Nathan Hale stood, Sarah, before they take me into custody, I need to say something. She looked at him. The man who'd killed her father, who'd carried that guilt for 9 years, who'd helped her anyway because it was the right thing to do. Your father forgave me before he died, Hale said. But I never forgave myself. What I did, what I became, there's no making that right. But helping you finish this, that's something. Small, but something. It's not enough, Sarah said. I know, but it's a start. Hale nodded. Let the FBI agents take him into custody. They'd charge him with murder, with conspiracy, with everything he'd done in service of a program that had long since lost its way. Senator William Hale would face similar charges. The brother who'd tried to use congressional testimony to cover his own crimes, who'd sacrificed good men to protect his reputation. Both Hales would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Justice served cold. Riley sat down beside Sarah. Sean would have liked how this ended. Justice for everyone. No easy answers, no simple villains. Your brother was a good soldier. So was your father. They sat in silence. Two people who'd lost family to the same machine, who'd found each other through shared pain and finished something neither could have done alone. Outside, the sun was setting over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in colors that had no names. Red and gold and purple bleeding together like wounds closing. Sarah thought about her father's last message. The zero is cold. Start fresh. Do better. She'd done better. Not perfect, not clean, but better. Agent Morrison approached. Staff Sergeant, we'll need your full statement. Everything that happened. It'll take a few days. I understand. For what it's worth, what you did today, that took real courage, real skill. The Bureau's grateful. Sarah nodded. Didn't know what to say. Didn't feel particularly courageous. Just tired. Kozlov brought coffee. Strong, black. The kind that could wake the dead or put them back to sleep. Cain will not go quietly, the old Russian said. Men like him, they have contingencies. Escape plans. Even in custody, he is dangerous. Let him try, Sarah said. I'm done running, done hiding. If he wants to come after me, he knows where to find me. But even as she said it, she knew the truth. Cain was smart, careful. He'd lawyer up, claim he was following orders. That Nightfall was sanctioned, that everything was legal under classified authorities. Some battles weren't won with bullets. They were won with testimony and evidence and the slow grinding wheels of justice. Sarah would testify, would tell the truth about everything she discovered, would make sure Nightfall's victims got their stories heard. It wouldn't bring her father back, wouldn't undo the 9 years of lies, but it would mean something. The zero was cold. She was starting over, doing better. And some ghosts, Sarah was learning, didn't need to haunt. They just needed to rest. Outside, night fell on the mountains. Inside, survivors sat together, bound by blood and purpose and the knowledge that they'd finished something that mattered. Tomorrow would bring questions, interrogations, legal proceedings, the machinery of justice grinding into motion. But tonight, for the first time in 9 years, Sarah Beckett slept without ghosts. The war wasn't over. Cain would fight. The legal battles would take years. Nightfall's full scope would take decades to unravel. But the cold zero had been reached. The fresh start had begun. And fire had vanished into something that looked almost like peace. The safe house was quiet in the way places get when secrets stop being kept. Agent Morrison had left hours ago with both Hales in custody. Riley had gone with Kozlov to coordinate witness protection protocols. Sarah sat alone at the table, her father's journal open in front of her, watching dawn break over the Blue Ridge Mountains. She should have felt relief. Victory. The mission was complete. Nightfall was exposed. Cain would be arrested within hours. Justice, however messy and complicated, was being served. But all Sarah felt was tired. The encrypted communicator buzzed. Morrison's number. Sarah answered. We have a problem, the agent said without preamble. Cain's gone. Sarah sat up straight. What do you mean gone? FBI reached him. Ba hit the facility 40 minutes ago. 12 agents, full tactical team. Cain's quarters were empty. So were Shaw's. The entire British delegation checked out at 0300 hours. Private jet filed a flight plan to London. By the time we got authorization to stop it, they were wheels up. Sarah closed her eyes. Of course. Cain was too smart to wait around. He'd known the moment Shaw's shot failed that the operation was compromised, had activated whatever escape plan he'd prepared months ago. What about the other shooters? The support team? Gone. All of them. We picked up 3 local contractors who didn't get the memo in time. They're talking, but they don't know anything useful. Kane compartmentalized the operation. Nobody knew the full picture except him. So he's in the wind, for now. But we have the Nightfall files, every operation, every client. We'll build a case. Interpol's already issued warrants. He can run, but he can't hide forever. Sarah knew better. Men like Kane didn't run. They reorganized, rebuilt, found new sponsors and new covers, and continued doing what they'd always done. The names changed, the methods evolved, but the core remained. There's something else, Morrison continued. We searched Kane's quarters more thoroughly, found a laptop, encrypted, but our tech people cracked it. There's a file labeled with your name. What kind of file? A dossier, complete background on you, medical records, service history, psychological evaluations, everything. Morrison paused. There's also a contingency plan. If the summit operation failed, Kane had a backup. What backup? He was going to offer you a job. Full recruitment pitch. Partnership in a reorganized Nightfall. He thought if he couldn't frame you, he could turn you. Sarah almost laughed. The audacity was almost admirable. He thought I'd work for the man who killed my father? The file suggests he didn't think you knew. The recruitment pitch was built around the idea that you believed the heart attack story, that you were just a skilled shooter looking for purpose after being sidelined by the army. And if I refused? Morrison's silence was answer enough. There's a final document, the agent said quietly. Termination authorization, your name. Effective immediately if recruitment failed. Kane doesn't leave loose ends. Sarah absorbed this. She'd saved Senator Hale's life, stopped an assassination, exposed a criminal conspiracy, and her reward was a target on her back from one of the world's most dangerous men. I need protection, she said. Already are arranged. Witness security until Kane is apprehended. New identity if necessary. The Bureau takes care of its assets. I'm not an asset, I'm a soldier. You're both, and you're still in danger. Morrison's tone softened slightly. Get some rest, Staff Sergeant. We'll have a team there by noon to move you to a secure facility. In the meantime, Kozlov is outside. He's armed and he's motivated. Nobody's getting through him. The line went dead. Sarah set down the communicator and looked out the window. Kozlov was indeed outside, sitting on the porch with a rifle across his lap. The old Russian had appointed himself her guardian, whether she wanted one or not. She returned to the journal, read her father's words again. The zero is cold. Start fresh. Do better. Thomas Beckett had started fresh by dying, by sacrificing himself to protect the evidence that would eventually expose Nightfall. Sarah wondered if that was the only way this ended, if cold zeros required cold bodies. The door opened. Riley came in carrying coffee and a grim expression. Heard about Kane, he said, setting down the cups. Morrison called me too. So what now? I hide? Change my name? Spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder? Riley sat down across from her. You could, or you could do what your father would have done, which is finish it. Not just expose Nightfall, end it. Make sure Kane can't rebuild. Make sure this doesn't happen again. Sarah studied Riley's face, saw determination there, and something else. Understanding. He'd lost his brother to this machine. She'd lost her father. They both had unfinished business. How, she asked. Riley pulled out his own tablet, brought up files. I've been digging into the Nightfall server data, cross-referencing operations with financial records. There's a pattern. He showed her. Transactions flowing through shell companies, money laundering networks. But underneath it all, a central node, a financier who'd been backing Nightfall operations for the past decade. This person has funded 80% of Nightfall's contracts since 2015. They're not just a client, they're a partner, maybe the senior partner. Sarah scanned the financial data. The amounts were staggering. Hundreds of millions moving through accounts in the Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore. Enough money to fund a small war. Do we have a name? That's the problem. The accounts are layered, protected by international banking secrecy laws. It would take years to unravel legally. But you have an idea who it is. Riley nodded slowly. There's one name that appears in the metadata, listed as a consultant. Paid a retainer of $50,000 monthly for the past 8 years. Always cash. Always delivered personally. He pulled up a photo. Sarah's breath caught. Master Sergeant Nathan Hale. Younger in the photo, maybe 55. Standing with Kane and a group of men in civilian clothes. Location tagged as Dubai. Date, 2017. Hale, Sarah said quietly. He wasn't just an operator. He was on the inside the whole time. Gets worse. Look at the date of this payment. Riley highlighted a transaction. $500,000. Date: December 2015. Memo line: Beckett's severance. Sarah felt cold spreading through her chest. They paid him $500,000 to kill my father, and he's been collecting a monthly retainer ever since. Probably to keep quiet, to make sure he didn't have second thoughts. Sarah stood, paced. The betrayal cut deeper than she'd expected. Hale had helped her, trained her, guided her to the truth. But underneath it all, he'd been part of the machine, had profited from her father's death. He's in FBI custody now, Riley said. Maximum security holding. But the case against him is complicated. He cooperated, provided evidence. His lawyer will argue for a deal. No deal. Sarah's voice was hard. He murdered my father for money. He doesn't get to walk. He won't walk. But he might avoid life in prison, might get 20 years with parole, might see daylight again before he dies. Sarah looked at Riley. What are you suggesting? I'm saying that sometimes justice doesn't happen in courtrooms. Sometimes it happens in the field, when nobody's watching. The implication was clear. Riley was offering her something the system wouldn't, a chance to settle the debt personally, to do what her father might have wanted, what she might want. Sarah thought about it, really thought about it, taking Hale's life the way he'd taken Thomas Beckett's, evening the scales, closing the loop. But that wasn't what her father had taught her. Thomas Beckett had believed in the hard right over the easy wrong. In justice, that meant something beyond revenge. No, Sarah said finally. Hale faces trial, faces every day of whatever sentence he gets. That's worse than a bullet. That's living with what he did. Riley nodded, looked almost relieved. Good, because I wasn't sure I could help you if you'd said yes, but I needed to know you'd thought about it, that you chose the hard way because it was right, not because you were afraid. I'm terrified, Sarah admitted. Kane's out there. Hale's going to testify against me to save himself. The Army will probably discharge me for going outside channels. Everything I've worked for is gone. Not everything. You have the truth. You have proof. You have people who believe in what you did. A vehicle pulled up outside. Kozlov's voice called out, FBI is here. Time to move. Sarah gathered her things. The journal, her father's rifle, the few possessions that mattered. Everything else could be left behind. Agent Morrison came in with 2 other agents. All business. Staff Sergeant Beckett, we're relocating you to a secure facility in West Virginia. You'll be debriefed over the next 48 hours. Then we'll assess the ongoing threat level and determine next steps. What about Kane? Interpol has him flagged at every major airport and border crossing. British authorities are cooperating. We'll find him. But Sarah heard the doubt in Morrison's voice. Kane had resources, contacts, 9 years of preparation for exactly this scenario. He'd disappear into the machinery of international finance and intelligence, emerging somewhere else with a new name and a new operation. Unless someone stopped him first. The drive to the secure facility took 3 hours. Sarah sat in the back of an armored SUV, watching the mountains roll past. These were old mountains, worn down by time and weather. Once they'd been tall as the Rockies. Now they were gentle, patient, survivors. She thought about her father walking these same mountains, teaching her to shoot, to think, to understand that skill without conscience was just murder with better aim. The facility was a converted resort deep in the Monongahela National Forest. High fences, armed guards. The kind of place where people disappeared into protective custody and sometimes never came out. Sarah was given a room on the 3rd floor. Clean, functional, a window overlooking the forest. She could see deer moving through the trees, could hear a stream somewhere below. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like a cage. The debriefing began that evening. Agent Morrison and 2 others, a stenographer recording every word. They went through everything. Fort Campbell, the summit, the files, the shot that saved Senator Hale. Sarah told the truth. All of it, held nothing back. 6 hours of testimony. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. You did good work, Staff Sergeant, Morrison said. What you've given us, it's going to take down one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in modern history. But Kane's still out there. We'll get him. Might take time, but we'll get him. Sarah nodded, didn't believe it, but nodded anyway. That night, she couldn't sleep. Lay in bed watching shadows move across the ceiling, thinking about Kane, about Hale, about all the people who died because Nightfall had forgotten what it was supposed to be. Around 300, her door opened quietly. Sarah's hand moved to the pistol under her pillow, but the figure in the doorway was familiar. Kozlov, get dressed, the Russian said quietly. We need to talk. They met in a secure room in the basement. Kozlov had disabled the cameras. Whatever he had to say, he didn't want recorded. Kane is in London, Kozlov said without preamble. I have confirmation. Safe house in Belgravia, protected by private security. British intelligence knows he's there but can't touch him. Diplomatic complications. How do you know this? Because I still have contacts. People who remember what Nightfall did, who want it ended as much as you do. Kozlov pulled out a folder. Kane is planning to disappear in 72 hours. New identity, new operation. He has backing from someone powerful, someone who wants Nightfall to continue under new management. Sarah opened the folder. Photos of Kane entering a townhouse, surveillance reports, security assessments. Why are you showing me this? Because FBI will not move fast enough. By the time they navigate international law and diplomatic channels, Kane will be gone, and he will rebuild, and more people will die. Kozlov's eyes were hard. My son died because Kane decided Ukrainian minister was worth $750,000. How many more sons die if Kane continues? What are you asking me to do? I am not asking anything. I am offering choice. You can stay here, be safe, testify, hope system works, or you can come with me. And this, make sure Kane never kills again. Sarah looked at the photos. Kane looked comfortable, confident. A man who'd beaten the system before and would beat it again. She thought about what her father would do. Thomas Beckett, who'd believed in justice through proper channels, who tried to testify before Congress, who died because he'd followed the rules. Then she thought about what Thomas Beckett had actually written. Fire and vanish. The code of operators who did what needed to be done and disappeared before questions were asked. If I do this, Sarah said slowly, if I go after Kane, I can't come back. The FBI will know. The Army will know. Everything I've built, my entire life, it's over. Yes, and if I fail, Kane kills me and wins anyway. Also yes, Sarah closed the folder. When do we leave? Kozlov smiled. Was Predator thing, all teeth and threat. Now. They left through a maintenance tunnel that Kozlov had mapped during his security assessment of the facility. Emerged half a mile away where a vehicle waited. Inside were weapons, documents, and cash. Everything needed for an operation that officially didn't exist. Riley knows, Kozlov said as they drove. He helped plan this. Could not come himself. Army would notice. But he supports what you are doing. The FBI will hunt me. Let them. By time they realize you are gone, we will be finished. The drive to the airport took 2 hours. Private airfield, small plane, pilot who didn't ask questions and didn't file flight plans. They were airborne by dawn, heading east across the Atlantic. Sarah spent the flight preparing, studying the surveillance photos, memorizing the layout of Kane's safe house, planning approach vectors and escape routes. It was easier than thinking about what she was throwing away. Her career, her freedom, her future, all of it sacrificed for one shot at the man who'd orchestrated her father's death. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the zero being cold meant burning everything down and starting from nothing. Maybe fresh starts required complete destruction of what came before. They landed in Scotland, drove south through the night, arrived in London as the city was waking up. Kozlov had arranged another safe house, small flat in Southwark, view of the Thames, close enough to Belgravia to matter but far enough to avoid immediate suspicion. Kane's security team rotates every 8 hours, Kozlov said, spreading maps across the table. 6 men, ex-military, professional. They check the perimeter every 30 minutes. Motion sensors on all approaches, cameras at every angle. So it's impossible. No, it's just difficult. Kozlov pointed to the building's roof. Skylight here. Original construction, 1890s. Never updated. Glass is old, brittle. Security system does not monitor it because access seems impossible. Seems. Adjacent building is 2 meters away. You could jump if you were skilled, if you were motivated. Sarah studied the map. The adjacent building was a hotel, 5 stories. The gap between buildings was maybe 7 feet. Doable, if everything went right. And once I'm inside, Kane's bedroom is top floor. He sleeps alone. Security team is downstairs. You would have maybe 3 minutes before they respond to any noise. 3 minutes to get in, find Kane, and get out. Or 3 minutes to get in, kill Kane, and die fighting his security team. Kozlov met her eyes. I will not lie to you. This is suicide mission. Odds of survival are very low. But odds of success? If you make the jump, if you get through the skylight, if Kane is where we think he is? Kozlov shrugged. Maybe 50%. Sarah nodded. 50% was better than she'd had on some missions. And this one mattered more than any of those. When? Tonight. Kane meets with his financier tomorrow morning. After that, he disappears. Tonight is last chance. They spent the day preparing. Sarah stripped and cleaned her rifle, the one her father had built for her. It felt right that this would be the weapon, that Thomas Beckett would be there in steel and wood and memory when his killer faced justice. As evening fell, Kozlov handed her a phone. Riley sent message, wants you to call before you go. Sarah dialed. Riley answered on the first ring. You don't have to do this, he said without preamble. You've already done more than anyone could ask. Kane will get caught eventually. You could wait it out. How long did you wait for justice for Sean? Riley was quiet. 8 years, and I still don't have it. Exactly. The system doesn't work for people like us. For soldiers who die because someone decided their lives were worth less than someone's career or someone's profit. The only justice we get is the justice we take. Your father wouldn't want you to throw your life away. My father threw his life away trying to do this the right way. I'm doing it the way that works. Another pause. Then Riley's voice, rough with emotion. Make it count, Sarah. Make every shot count. I always do. She hung up, looked at Kozlov. I'm ready. They drove to Belgravia as night settled over London, parked 3 blocks from the target. Sarah wore black, face paint, gloves, the uniform of people who operated in shadows. Kozlov handed her an earpiece. I will be listening. If you need extraction, if anything goes wrong, you call. I will come. If something goes wrong, get out. Don't wait for me. I did not wait for my son. I will not abandon you. Sarah touched the old Russian's shoulder. Brief contact. All the thanks she could manage. Then she was moving. Through the London night, past cafes and shops closing for the evening, past people living normal lives who had no idea what was about to happen 3 blocks away. The hotel was boutique, expensive. The kind of place where staff didn't ask questions if you looked like you belonged. Sarah walked in through the service entrance, maintenance uniform she'd picked up that afternoon, clipboard, the armor of the invisible worker. She took the stairs to the 5th floor, moved down the hallway to the room Kozlov had reserved that morning. Empty, waiting. Sarah opened the window, looked across the gap to Kane's building, 7 feet, maybe 8. The skylight was visible on Kane's roof, dark glass, old frame. In Afghanistan, she'd made shots at distances measured in miles. But that was with a rifle, with calculations and breathing and time to prepare. This was a jump in the dark, literal and metaphorical, one chance. If she missed, 5 stories to the pavement below. If she made it, Kane and his security team on the other side. Sarah thought about her father, about the journal, about every lesson he'd taught her. Focus, discipline, heart. She backed up to get a running start. 3 breaths, the Beckett breath, deep in, half out. Hold. Then she ran. 4 steps and she launched. For a moment she was airborne, suspended between buildings, between her old life and whatever came next. Her hands hit the edge of Kane's roof. Gripped. Held. She pulled herself up, rolled onto the rooftop, lay there for a moment, breathing hard. Made it. The skylight was exactly where Kozlov had said. Old glass, iron frame. Sarah pulled out a glass cutter, scored a circle large enough to fit through. Tapped gently, the glass fell inward with barely a sound. She lowered herself through the opening, dropped into a hallway, top floor, silent except for the sound of her own heartbeat. Kane's bedroom door was at the end of the hall. Sarah moved toward it, each step careful, deliberate. A lifetime of training compressed into this moment. She was 3 feet from the door when it opened. Kane stood there, not surprised, not alarmed, just waiting. Staff Sergeant Beckett, he said calmly. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Sarah's hand moved to her sidearm, but Kane raised his hands. Empty, no weapon visible. I'm not armed, and he said, won't do either of us any good anyway. You came here to kill me. I'm not going to stop you. But I am going to talk first. You set up my father, had him killed, tried to frame me for murder. Why would I listen to anything you have to say? Because what I have to say might change your mind about pulling that trigger. Kane stepped back, gestured to his bedroom. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Then you do whatever you came here to do. Sarah kept her weapon trained on him, followed him into the room. It was sparse, functional, a bed, a desk, maps on the wall, the room of someone who'd spent too many years living out of duffel bags to bother with comfort. Kane sat on the bed, hands visible, body language relaxed. Your father and I were friends once. Did you know that? I know you had him killed. I gave the order, yes. But do you know why? Kane leaned forward. Thomas discovered that Nightfall had been compromised, that someone was using it for personal gain. But it wasn't me. I was trying to stop it. Your father and I were working together. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. You're lying. Am I? Check the files you recovered. Look at the dates. Every operation I personally commanded, every mission I authorized, the targets were legitimate. Terrorists, arms dealers, people who needed killing. But there are dozens of operations I didn't authorize. Operations that came from higher up, from the financier Riley found in the metadata. Hale, not Nathan. William. Kane's eyes were cold. Senator William Hale has been running Nightfall as his personal assassination service for a decade. Nathan was the trigger man. I was the cover story, the public face who could be blamed if anything went wrong. Sarah's mind was racing. The files, the payments, the pattern Riley had found. It all pointed to William Hale, but the evidence against Kane was just as strong. Then why did you try to kill the senator? Because he was going to testify, going to blame everything on me and Nathan. Make himself the hero who exposed the conspiracy, and I couldn't prove otherwise without revealing classified operations that would get good men killed. Kane stood slowly. Your father figured it out, understood that William was the puppet master. Thomas was going to testify to that. So William had Nathan kill him, made it look like I gave the order, and I let the lie stand because exposing the truth would have destroyed the entire program, including the parts that actually matter. The parts that murder people for money. The parts that stop terrorists who hide behind diplomatic immunity, who use children as shields, who can't be touched by conventional means. Kane's voice was hard. I've killed bad men, Sarah. Never innocents, never for profit. Every target I've taken has made the world safer. Can you say the same about the senator? Sarah wanted to pull the trigger. End this, but doubt was creeping in. The evidence supported Kane's version as much as it supported the official story. William Hale had the motive, had the access, had shown himself capable of sacrificing good men to protect his reputation. Why should I believe you? Kane pulled out a phone. Because I have proof. Recordings of William giving orders. Financial records showing the payments came from his personal accounts. Everything you need to prove he's been running Nightfall since before your father died. He tossed the phone to Sarah. She caught it one-handed, weapon still trained on Kane. That's insurance, Kane said. Evidence I've been gathering for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. You walking into my safe house seems like that moment. Sarah looked at the phone, then at Kane. If you had this evidence, why not use it before? Why let William testify? Because I needed someone to expose Nightfall. The program's been corrupted beyond saving. Better to burn it all down and start over. William's testimony would have done that, but he would have walked away clean while I took the fall. This way, you have the proof to destroy him too. And you get what? I get to disappear. Live out whatever years I have left without looking over my shoulder. Fair trade, considering I'm handing you the man who killed your father. Sarah's weapon didn't waver, but her certainty did. Everything Kane was saying made sense, fit the evidence, explained the contradictions. But it was also exactly what Kane would say if he was lying. If this was his final play. Turning her against William Hale while he escaped. Shaw's shot at the senator, Sarah said. Tell me the truth about that. Kane's expression didn't change. Shaw was under orders to deliberately miss. The entire operation was theater, designed to make William panic, to force him into making mistakes. You risked a senator's life on theater? I risked nothing. Shaw is the best shooter I've ever worked with. Better than your father. Better than you. If I'd wanted the senator dead, he'd be dead. But I needed him alive. Needed him scared. Needed him to reveal his connections to Nightfall through his own actions. Kane moved to the window. You shooting Shaw's rifle? That was unexpected. Impressive. But ultimately unnecessary. Shaw would have missed anyway. Your shot just made it more dramatic. Sarah processed this. The logic held. If Kane had wanted William dead, There were a dozen easier ways. The elaborate summit setup made more sense as misdirection than assassination. Kozlov's son, Sarah said, Ukraine, was that William's operation or yours? Kane's expression tightened. Mine. But the target was a Ukrainian separatist leader funding attacks on civilians. The minister was collateral, tragic, wrong. But the alternative was letting a war criminal continue operating. Sometimes there are no good choices, only less bad ones. So it's okay because the target was bad? That's what Nightfall's become? Deciding who deserves to die? No, it's what Nightfall was always supposed to be. Difficult choices in impossible situations. Your father understood that until he didn't, until he decided the system was too broken to save. Kane turned from the window. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to finish what Thomas started. Use that evidence. Destroy William Hale. Expose the real corruption. Then decide whether the world's better or worse with Nightfall gone entirely. Sarah looked at the phone in her hand, then at Kane, then at the window where London sprawled in the darkness below. Millions of people sleeping peacefully because someone somewhere made the hard choice to eliminate threats before they grew. But who decided what was a threat? Who chose which lives mattered and which didn't? Her father had asked those questions and died for it. Now Sarah was being asked to make the same choice. I want the truth, Sarah said. No more lies, no more games. Tell me what really happened to my father, all of it. Kane nodded slowly. Thomas found proof that William was using Nightfall for personal gain. He came to me. We made a plan. Thomas would collect evidence while I provided cover. We'd expose William together. But William found out. He found out, ordered Nathan to eliminate Thomas, threatened to reveal Nathan's family if he refused. Nathan's daughter was in college at the time. William made it clear what would happen to her if Nathan didn't comply. Sarah thought about Nathan Hale, the guilt in his eyes, the weight he'd carried for 9 years. It wasn't just that he'd killed Thomas. It was that he'd had no choice, and that made it worse somehow. Nathan could have gone to the authorities. With what proof? Against a sitting senator, former CIA director? Nathan did what he had to do to protect his daughter, just like Thomas would have done to protect you. Sarah lowered her weapon. Not all the way, but enough to show she was listening. Why help me, she asked. Why train me through Hale? Why give me access to the files? Because Nathan came to me after Thomas died, told me what William had done. We've been working together ever since to gather evidence, waiting for the right moment. When you showed up at Fort Campbell, when you made that shot, we knew. You were the key, Thomas's daughter, his legacy, the one person who could finish this. So I'm a tool, a weapon you pointed at William Hale. You're a soldier who deserves the truth, and now you have it. Kane moved toward the window. William Hale killed your father, killed Riley's brother, used Nightfall to eliminate anyone who threatened his power. That phone has everything you need to prove it. The question is what you do now. Sarah looked at the phone, at Kane, at the choice in front of her. She could kill Kane, avenge everyone Nightfall had hurt, strike a blow against the machinery of sanctioned murder. Or she could believe him, use the evidence, go after William Hale and expose the real corruption. But there was a third option, one her father would have taken. How do I know this isn't fake, she asked. How do I know you didn't manufacture this evidence to save yourself? You don't, but you can verify it. The recordings have metadata. The financial records can be cross-referenced. It will all check out because it's real. Kane turned from the window. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the evidence. Same thing your father did. Sarah made her decision. She holstered her weapon. If I find out you're lying, if any of this is fake, I'll come back, and next time I won't listen. Fair enough. Sarah turned to leave, stopped at the door. Why did you claim my shot at Fort Campbell, the 28-47-meter kill? You said it was yours. Kane smiled, genuine this time. Because I needed you angry, needed you motivated, needed you to prove yourself so nobody would question why I invited you to the summit. It was theater, and you played your part perfectly. And the part where you tried to frame me for assassinating a senator? Never going to happen. The operation was designed to fail, to create enough chaos that William would panic and reveal his connections to Nightfall, which he did. The moment Shaw's shot went wild, William started making calls, calling in favors, protecting himself, and we recorded all of it. Sarah shook her head. You used everyone. Me, Riley, Kozlov. We were all pieces on your board. Welcome to intelligence work. Everyone's a piece. The question is whether you're playing the game or being played. Sarah left, retraced her steps through the building, out the window, across the gap, down the hotel stairs, back to the street where Kozlov waited. Is done? The Russian asked. It's done, but not the way we thought. She showed him the phone, the evidence, explained what Kane had said. Kozlov listened without expression. You believe him? I believe the evidence. We'll verify it. If it's real, we use it. If it's fake, we come back for Kane. They drove to the safe house, spent the next 12 hours going through every file on the phone, cross-referencing with the Nightfall server data, checking metadata, verifying recordings. It was all real. William Hale had been running Nightfall as his personal assassination service, had ordered Thomas Beckett's death, had set up Kane to take the fall if anything went wrong, had built a career on a mountain of corpses. Sarah called Riley, explained everything, sent him the files. This is it, Riley said quietly. This is what we need. William Hale goes down. Nightfall ends. We win. Do we? Kane walks. Nathan gets a deal for cooperating. Everyone who pulled triggers gets to live while good men stay dead. Justice isn't perfect, but it's what we have. Sarah knew he was right, but it still felt incomplete, like the equation hadn't balanced, like the zero wasn't quite cold enough. Then Kozlov spoke, his voice careful, measured. There is something I must tell you, something should my eyes have said before London. Sarah and Riley both looked at him. The old Russian's expression was unreadable. When you escaped from Summit Facility, Kozlov said, when you came to Safe House, I told you FBI agents brought Senator, that Riley and Hale gave them evidence. Yes, this was true, but there is more. Kozlov's hands clenched. I was one who told Kane where you would be. I leaked your location to him. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon. What? Not to betray you, to test. Kozlov met her eyes. Kane contacted me after Shaw failed, offered me money, $2 million, same amount he offered others. He wanted to know where you were. I told him safe house location. You sold me out. I gave him information, but I also made sure you had protection, made sure FBI was there, made sure you were never truly in danger. Kozlov's voice was hard. I needed to know if Kane would try to kill you. If he did, I would have killed him myself. But he did not come. He ran instead. This told me what I needed to know. Riley stood. You used her as bait. I used her as proof. Kane had opportunity to eliminate threat. He chose not to. This means either he is telling truth about William Hale, or he has different plan that requires Sarah alive. Kozlov pulled out his own phone, showed transaction records. $2 million. Kane paid me. I have not touched it. It is evidence. More proof of his operations. Sarah wanted to be angry, wanted to feel betrayed, but she understood the logic. Kozlov had given Kane the opportunity to reveal his true intentions, and Kane had chosen to run rather than eliminate the one person who could destroy him. You should have told me, Sarah said. Yes, I should have. I apologize. Kozlov bowed his head slightly. But now you know. Kane is either ally or very patient enemy. Time will tell which. This was the sixth twist, the revelation that even their supposed protector had been playing his own game, testing loyalties, gathering evidence, making sure that every piece of the puzzle was in place before committing to a final move. Sarah sat down, the weight of it all pressing on her shoulders. How many more secrets are there? How many more people were using me? In this business? Kozlov shrugged. Always more secrets. Always more games. Question is not whether you are being used. Question is whether you choose to be used for right reasons. Sarah looked at the evidence, at the proof that would destroy William Hale, at the money that proved Kane's operations, at the web of lies and truth so tangled she couldn't separate them anymore. We give the FBI everything, she said finally. All of it. Kane's evidence, Kozlov's money, the server files. Let them sort out who's lying and who's telling the truth. And Kane? Riley asked. Kane made his choice. He gave us the weapon to destroy William. If he's lying, the evidence will prove it. If he's telling the truth, maybe Nightfall had one operator who still remembered what it was supposed to be. They flew back to the States. Sarah surrendered to FBI custody, spent a week being debriefed, answering questions, watching as the evidence she'd provided destroyed Senator William Hale's career and sent him to prison for life. Nathan Hale cut a deal, testified against his brother, got 20 years with possibility of parole. Sarah visited him once in prison. They didn't speak, just looked at each other across the glass. Two people bound by blood and guilt and the weight of impossible choices. Kane disappeared. Interpol dropped the charges after reviewing Sarah's evidence. Officially, Lucas Kane died in a car accident in Prague 6 months later. Unofficially, Sarah suspected he was somewhere warm, living under a new name, continuing to do what he'd always done. The Army gave Sarah an honorable discharge. Medical reasons. Her shoulder injury made her unfit for continued service. She didn't fight it. Some battles weren't worth winning. 4 months after it all ended, Sarah stood at Arlington National Cemetery, her father's grave. The headstone read Master Chief Thomas Beckett, SEAL Team 6, loving father, devoted patriot. It didn't mention Nightfall, didn't mention the evidence he'd died gathering, didn't mention that his sacrifice had eventually brought down one of the most corrupt programs in intelligence history. But Sarah knew that was enough. Riley found her there. They'd both been called to testify before Congress. The hearings would start next week. Nightfall would be exposed fully. The victims would get their stories told. "You ready for this?" Riley asked. "No, but I'm going anyway." They walked together through the rows of white headstones. So many dead, so many who'd served and sacrificed and been forgotten by everyone, except the people who loved them. "What will you do after?" Riley asked. "After the hearings, after it's all over." Sarah thought about that. She had the money from her father's life insurance, had skills that translated to civilian work, had a future that was completely undefined for the first time in her life. "I don't know," she admitted. "Start over, I guess. The zero is cold. Time to build something new." "Your father would be proud. You finished what he started." "I finished part of it? The fight's not over. Nightfall's gone, but there will be others. There always are. People who decide they know better, who think the ends justify the means, who sacrifice good men for bad reasons. So we stopped them too." Sarah looked at Riley, saw determination there, the same fire she felt. "We? You think I'm going back to Fort Campbell after this? Pretending everything's normal? My brother died for a lie. I'm not letting that be meaningless." They shook hands, an alliance forged in shared loss and tempered by the knowledge that justice was never simple, never clean, but always necessary. Sarah returned to her father's grave, placed her hand on the cold marble. "I did it, Dad. Your way, the hard way, the right way. The zero's cold. I'm starting fresh, building something better." The wind moved through the cemetery, carrying the whispers of the dead, the promises of the living. Sarah Beckett walked away from her father's grave, away from Fort Campbell and the Army, away from Nightfall and all the ghosts it had made. She walked towards something new, undefined, uncertain, but clean, the cold zero. And as she reached the cemetery gate, her phone buzzed. Encrypted message. No sender. Just 3 words. Fire and vanish. Sarah smiled, deleted the message, kept walking. Some ghosts chose when to haunt, and this one had just chosen to rest. I spent weeks researching real military sniper protocols to get Sarah's story right. That 3,400-meter shot, based on actual record attempts. The Beckett breath technique, inspired by methods used by SEAL Team 6 instructors. What hit me hardest while writing was the question, when the system that's supposed to protect us becomes the threat, what does a soldier do? Sarah chose the hard right over the easy wrong, just like so many of you did in your service. What would you have done in her position? Let me know below. If this story resonated, there's more coming. Hit subscribe so you don't miss them.